Sports reports, no gimmicks, no clowns. 2-5, Mr. Logical, we run this town. Real talk only, no chasing, no doubt. From the east to the west, it's the order we shout. Mic check, lights flash, game time, stay ready. 2 vets in the zone, keep the pressure real heavy. Big hits, big plays, yeah, we breaking it down. Truth rings in your speakers, every word is the crown. From the north side hustle to that southern flame. Midwest grind, west coast of the game. Sports talk kings, yeah, we wear that crown. Turn it up, let them know it's about to go down. Sports reports, no gimmicks, no clowns. 2-5, Mr. Logical, we run this town. Real talk only, no chaser, no doubt. From the east to the west, it's the order we shout.
It's about to go down.
Yes, you are now listening to the sounds of Sports Reports is Ordered. Sounds brought to you by the one and only world-renowned, world-famous, cool, calm, and collected. He is Mr. Logical. And then down here in the Alamo, I do believe in Joe Hendry. I am 2-5. Tonight, we're going to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. Are they done out here in these streets? We're going to talk about all the vitriol and craziness that is Shedeur Sanders. We're going to talk about the college football playoff rankings. Virginia Tech has a new head coach. And for the first time this season, we're going to go around the association. So we're going to jump right to it. Like, review, subscribe, share, rate, do all the free things, do all the good things. Liquid death in hand. And let's get right to it. So, Mr. Logical,
we Reaper tonight.
Point blank period. Are the Chiefs done?
I don't think they're going to have a bad year. I think their year will finish fine, 10-7, something like that. I just think they have 3 tiebreaker scenarios that are right ahead of them. So the division is out of reach. Not mathematically, but theoretically, the division is out of reach. And they have a loss to Buffalo. They have a loss to Jacksonville. And they have a loss to the Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 5, 6, and 7 in any order between those 3 teams that the Chiefs would then have to leapfrog. And pretty much if everyone plays even Stevens football for the rest of the season, they're just going to end up at 8. And it's, it's the last year the ball bounced their way in 1-score games. This year it hasn't. The calls went their way. The defensive play went their way. We remember the game against the Chargers. They had an opportunity to make a stop on 3rd down. Chris Jones jumps inside. Herbert gets outside. 1st down. This, with Bo Nix, he makes that throw down the sideline. The corner's head's looking inside. The ball goes over his shoulder. Long completion, easy field goal, game over. So it's just those 1 and 2 plays here and there, coupled with the fact that a couple of these games, sometimes playing the Chiefs is another team's Super Bowl. And I think they always feel like they can turn it on, but just a couple of games they let slip. The Jacksonville game is probably the one I think of the most. They were up 14-0 in the red zone. He threw the pick 6. And I think that's a microcosm of their season right there. That pick 6.
And don't forget, in that same game, they lost because Trevor Lawrence fell and was still able to get up and gather himself and run into the end zone. But on top of what you were saying, about those close games, Kansas City, to be exact, 0-5 in those 1-score games this year. And then you talked about the tiebreakers. On top of that, even though they have the tiebreaker over Baltimore, Baltimore is now tied with them record-wise. And don't blink, because if you blink, you might miss the Houston Texans, who now have the same record as the Kansas City Chiefs and are actually ahead of them. So if the playoffs were today, Kansas City would actually be 9 because Houston would be in front of them. So yeah, it's a tough road to hoe. And I have the schedule pulled up here from our good buddies over at ESPN, and they're coming into this weekend, another must win. We keep using that phrase on the show, must win. It's at home, but they got the Colts coming in. You know what I mean? So if they can get past the Colts, Then they got to come down to Dallas for Thanksgiving, more specifically Arlington. But you know what I mean? But we know Dallas can score with them. It's just going to be a matter if Dallas can get stops. Then they get the game against Houston, and then the Chargers. So their season is wrapped up in these next 4 games. They should beat Tennessee, and then you close with Denver and Vegas. So from that standpoint, these next 4 games, if they could go 3-1, then I think they still have a good shot to get in.
3-1 will put them at 8-6. I just think 11-6 is what they need to get to make the playoffs. So that means they would literally have to go 6-1 over the next 7 or 8 weeks. And they haven't looked like a team that could go 6-1 over a stretch. They look like a 500 team because it was, the way things have kind of transpired. So I'm worried that the Chiefs won't be able to respond in the way they need to. And they're a great team, but eventually everything comes to an end. And I'm not saying this is the end, but that 7 years in a row hosting the AFC Championship game or being in the AFC Championship game, that might be done.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, we had this big conversation about, hey, Kansas City is going to be a wild card. They're going to have to go on the road, for the first time ever in Patrick Mahomes' career. They made it out just fine, but I'm not sure that happens this time around because you might have to go to Denver and Indianapolis this time around, versus Buffalo, who you have this Jedi mind trick holdover, and Baltimore, who you've already beaten in the AFC Championship game at Baltimore. So it's going to be a tough road. But, when I look at Kansas City, they went toe-to-toe with Denver this weekend. They didn't just get beat, like you said, close games, 0-5 in these one-score games. But when you look at the numbers, it's kind of crazy because on offense, they're 7th in yards per game. They're 9th in points per game. On defense, they're 7th in total defense and 4th in total yards allowed. So they are a team, just looking at their statistical profile, that could win some games that they've been losing earlier in the season.
They haven't been able to control. They make plays because they have outstanding talent on the team, and they have greatness at the quarterback position, greatness at the head coach position. I think the coordinators are doing a top-tier job. I think what they provide up in their defensive front is all top-tier. Their inability to control the clock with the run game, because if they could have a guy in there getting 4.5 to 5 yards a carry, or at least collectively, the whole ensemble, if they were able to consistently do that, that keeps them out of 3rd and 7, that keeps them out of passing on 1st, 2nd, and 3rd down and being so pass happy, because they still try to run the ball. It's just that, how many times are you going to run the ball on 2nd down when you got 2 yards on 1st down? It's only so long you can just be like, you know what? Yeah, we'll just keep plugging away because things have to improve for that to be the case. So they get a lot of yards. It's just that they can't control the clock, keep the ball, and play keep away. And I don't think they're used to playing keep away. They're used to playing backbreaker. They're used to playing, giant killer and ripping people's hearts out. So I think they've always played like, you know what? As long as Patrick has the ball at the end, we got a shot. Or as long as we need our defense to get a stop and get the ball back to Patrick, we got a shot. It's just that in these 5 games, they couldn't get the ball back. And I don't think it's poor play. I think it's just a matter of that was kind of living dangerously. But like I said, that Jacksonville pick 6 is probably the moment. And once again, I say again, the Hollywood Brown running the over route across the middle and the pass hits him in the face. If he's looking for the ball, we're not even having this discussion. If he's looking for the ball, I think the confidence is sky high, and they're probably sitting at 7-3. If not, they're probably sitting at 7-3 right now if he catches that ball. Because I think he runs. I think it just shows that the Chiefs are just impervious to losing, and then that mystique comes over their head, and then you end up doing what Dan Campbell did against Philly, where you play uncharacteristically bad and get decision-making parts. And that's how the Chiefs were getting over on people. Guys were just, people were like rushing it, and they were overly concerned with the fact that if Patrick gets his ball back, what are we going to do? We can't stop him.
Right. And that's why, like, I was telling you, going back to that Jacksonville game one more time, there was a moment where I felt Patrick Mahomes had his Steph Curry moment where he was kind of showboating just a little bit. And like, the reason that I bring that up again is because I feel like I saw that Sunday against Denver as well. There was a play where they got into the red zone and he just kind of like did his little thing. He hit he ran over the defender and he just kind of got up and did like the little flex on him or whatever. And I was like, see?
But it was a holding call that brought it back.
Right. It was a holding call that brought it back. But it's one of those things where, before that was like the death stare, right? Because Kansas City's in that zone where they've earned, like, more specifically, I'm talking about you and I, like, they've earned that respect in that capital because of what they've accomplished. So Kansas City, part of the reason why I picked them to win that game against Denver the other day was because I was looking at them through that Kobe, Mike, Tom Brady type lens where it's like, hey, they're coming off a loss, or hey, they're back against the wall. Yeah. You don't want to see that. You know what I mean? And that's why I mostly went with them to win that game. But now I think we're at the point where we can't even do that anymore, because this season is the ultimate, hey, all the bricks went your way, and now it's reversed. So now I guess I'll just ask you in closing, can they beat the Colts this weekend?
Yes. I think they can, because I think with the Colts score a lot of points because they control the ball on the ground. I'm not saying they can contain Jonathan Taylor. I think that they can make Daniel Jones. I think if you watch the Atlanta Colts tape and Spags implements that kind of blitzkrieg technique where you're just kind of just overwhelming the gaps, because Daniel Jones wasn't handling that well. Eventually, it wore down Atlanta because, like I tell you, Atlanta's problem, like, they don't have a lot of size up front.
Oh,
guys were getting through. guys were getting to Daniel Jones. So I think if Spags looks at that and like, yeah, we can do that. The problem is everybody who stepped up and played their Super Bowl against Kansas City is playing duds against the people that they have the tiebreaker against. So, like, Jacksonville stepped up and had their proverbial Super Bowl, and then the Chargers, they beat the Chargers. But then, like, Jacksonville lost to, like, somebody like Buns after that. And I think they lost to
Houston with Davis Mills.
So they, like, so it's like, and then Buffalo lost to Atlanta and Miami this year, but they were in charge of the control of the game against Kansas City wire to wire. So it just doesn't help that even with that, they still have a couple of bad losses themselves. So that's the problem. Also, they got to go. They have to finish the season 11-6 to get 5, 6, or 7.
Yeah, and to your point, one of the things that you talked about earlier, how they're not able to control the clock and all that, like, that definitely doesn't help to have Pacheco not playing, because he's the bruiser that they do have. Kareem Hunt can, Kareem Hunt can, do the things, like out of the backfield, those Jahmyr Gibbs type plays or whatever. But I don't know if he's going to be the down guy that, that you're going to put on your back and say, I need these 3 yards so we can wrap it up and take knees from here on out. I don't think he's that guy. But as you look at Thursday Night Football this week, this is going to be really interesting for Kansas City, because you got Houston and Buffalo playing against each other. And, we mentioned, Buffalo has the tiebreaker on them. And I mentioned that Houston is ahead of them in the playoff hierarchy right now. Right. that game is down here in Houston. So, simply put, can Houston keep it going and defensively shut down Josh Allen enough to knock off Buffalo?
Josh Allen's out here playing like he's playing his team in Madden. Like, I'm going to get all the touchdowns. I'm getting all the points. I'm getting all the post-game interviews. I'm doing everything.
Right.
CJ Stroud, he had a great rookie year. He had the sophomore slump. The team, like I said, defensively, they're doing fine. But you don't know what Buffalo team you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing is, like, do you have to go through Josh Allen to make all of your big splash plays? Or can you just get the ball to a guy in space and he makes the big play? Or does it have to be Josh Allen sliding in the pocket and he puts a dart on you over the safety, underneath the other safety, and you just make a great catch? Can people just make plays when they get the ball in their hand? That way Josh doesn't have to scramble for multiple touchdowns or run around and run people over and put himself in harm's way. That's the difference, because the Buffalo that played in the compressor, that Buffalo team isn't going to beat any team in the NFL. Losing to Miami, granted, it was in Miami. That's a tough sell. So if you don't play the Miami, Atlanta, Buffalo game, I think they'll be fine against Houston.
Yeah, and not only that, no Dalton Kincaid again. We saw Keon Coleman not get any snaps the other day. So, we don't even know CJ Stroud's status. It looks like he may not be able to go again. And I'm guessing that has to do with the short turnaround. But we'll see, So I'll say either way, I think Buffalo wins the game. But I'm not sure if it's a walk away. It's still going to be a tough game because Houston's defense is for real. But
Kansas City fans are rooting for Buffalo for sure.
Maybe.
I mean, you got to get somebody out of the way. So I'd rather take the team with 5 wins and go ahead and give them loss number 6 versus hoping that Buffalo just collapses down the stretch. I think getting Houston to 5-6, and then you beat Indy. Now you're at 6-5. I think you would take that versus maybe Buffalo falters.
Yeah, and Buffalo, of course, they still have another matchup with New England. So and this time it's in Foxborough. So not saying that automatically means that Buffalo's going to lose or anything like that. But, if I'm the Patriots, I figure I walked into Orchard Park and beat you. So now you.
Yeah, now you're hoping that you can return the favor. Like I said, I talked about it last week. New England having 9 wins isn't a big deal if they get to 10 wins. It's not a big deal unless Buffalo gives them 2. So if they split, they split. Like I said, that's what we're talking about, is so-and-so on the hot seat because of X, Y, and Z. New England's playing good football. Like I said, the Chiefs, just because of the couple of bad losses and if they lost to some NFC opponents and they beat the Chargers and they beat Denver, it wouldn't be so bleak. But being behind 3 teams that beat you head to head, who are also 5, 6, and 7 currently in the playoff rankings, it's tough. I imagine that there's probably a secondary level of motivation to keep the Chiefs out.
Right.
If you're any one of those teams, because they put Jacksonville out when they had a good year. They put Buffalo out every time Buffalo's had a good year. They dominated the division with the Chargers. So it's like each one of these teams has a different bulletin board thing, play like a champion, Notre Dame style, like thing they can slap on the way out of the locker room to keep the Chiefs out. So
see, and it would be so Kansas City.
They can do that.
It would be so Kansas City to lose to the Colts this weekend and then win out. But Mr. Logical, over on Lake Erie, we asked and we received. We wanted to see Shedeur on the field. We got Shedeur on the field. If you disrespect them on the field, expect them on the field. So what we got?
It was so much buildup, and it's first. I don't want to place blame. I want to be realistic. I'm a logical thinker.
It was like your first time, right? You was all pumped up, and then 2 minutes later, you were deflated.
Hey, it still counts. Yeah. So the expectation for a rookie coming into a game against a team like Baltimore, who smell blood in the water, it looked like it. Now, should he have been called for 16 dropbacks? Probably not. Maybe we get 2 running backs involved and try to maybe some screen passes, especially when you see Baltimore is lined up with their safeties and corners and everybody's standing up at the line. I think Stefanski can be like, yo, hey, check out of that. We no 5-step drops in this. We don't have the protection for it. Hit this over here on this side or hit this quick over here. The blitz is coming from, like, somebody should be communicating that. But you live and you learn. Him not getting first team reps all year is weird, considering you're playing 2 rookies. And I get that you want to get your starter the most opportunities, but that's if he's Matthew Stafford. And it's like you're working multiple things. But if you're working Dylan Gabriel in, I can't imagine, say hypothetically, say the install for the Rams is like 20 new plays for this week's game. I imagine that Dylan Gabriel is probably getting 6. So of those 6 new plays, you get 100 reps. You can get Shedeur in there for 15 to 20, just in case your guy gets knocked out. Like, that's the whole point of having, especially when you have 2 rookies. It's not like one guy was RG3 picked in the top 2, and then you have a guy in the 4th round, and Kirk Cousins, who's just watching. You got 2 guys who were picked in the 3rd and the 5th round, and their draft position could have easily been interchangeable. So to treat one as if he is the franchise future and the other guy is strictly the backup didn't make a lot of sense. And it showed when he came to the game.
Well, I mean, they look like a team that came into training camp with 4 quarterbacks. You know, that's what they look like.
And then at one point they had 7 on the roster.
Yeah, and so like, this is the thing, right? I like a couple of things I saw from Shedeur. Like, obviously, if you're just looking at the numbers, he went 4 for 16. He threw a pick. So if you're just looking at the numbers and using that to justify your position, you're not going to find anything positive. You know what I mean? But what I think I like that I saw is probably the biggest criticism of him is that he's indecisive. He holds on to the ball, waiting for the big play. He runs backwards, as somebody on TikTok told me last night. But I saw a lot of plays where he stepped up and ran forward. You know, he had to get out of there. And there were a couple of plays where I remember a couple of years ago when Jimbo Fisher was the coach at Florida State, they would do this thing where if the defense was offsides, the lineman would just stay stationary, and then the quarterback and everybody else would still do their actions. You know, That's what the Browns offensive line looked like. There were plays where they literally stood up and looked like they didn't even try to push anybody. They just stood there, and the Ravens came through. And Shedeur was able to get out of there. I mean, Shedeur almost threw the game-tying touchdown pass. You know, but Larvadan dropped it, or it was a good defensive play too. But he was throwing to a dude named Larvadan. You know what I'm saying? So like, hands. No, but it's just one of those things where I kept telling people last night, like, I don't like to do the thing where we're talking about this, but I'm going to bring up that as a comparison. But I felt it was apropos in this situation because I'm like, hey, JJ McCarthy is on start number 5 or number 6, and there has been no improvement. You know what I mean? When I look at Cam Ward, the number 1 overall draft pick in this same draft with a 58% completion percentage, 6 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, and that's with first team reps all year. You know what I mean? So now I expect this guy that didn't get first team reps to come in here against the Ravens and all of a sudden, just turn into Tom Brady overnight. Not to mention, this is the week because from what I've been reading so far, it looks like Gabriel might not be able to go this week. It's still early, but it looks like he might not be able to go. But they play the Raiders this week. So now, if you got a whole week of the first team reps going to Shedeur, and you come out against the Raiders and you lay an egg, now we can criticize you. It's still your second game, but we can criticize you a little bit more based on who you're playing against.
Yeah, this is what happens when you're a polarizing player. Like, some people have it. Some people throughout sports just have a thing that captivates audiences on both ends of the spectrum at the same degree. People who love Steph, there's also haters on the same level of disgust with Steph and how he plays. People who love LeBron, people who love Mike, people who love Muhammad Ali, people who love Serena Williams, Tiger Woods, Bryson DeChambeau, whatever person is, if you're a polarizing figure in sports or in pop culture, there's going to be people who want you to fail and people who understand like where you are because they just really, really like who you are. Shedeur is one of those people. The crowd went crazy. He came out doing an arm thing like he really felt confident. I think that in of itself will help him going forward because he has the tools. The ball came flying out of his hand. The interception, he was getting blitzed, and I think it would have been off target anyway, but he was getting hit right as he was throwing the ball. Baltimore came out and Baltimore's like, listen, we all know, everyone knows from all the reports, he's not getting any first team reps. So they didn't even sit in zone. Like, they didn't sit like a comfortable, like, let him pick his spot. It was like, all right, let's come after him. And he did the same thing.
And you saw the first time they hit him.
Retreat.
Like five of them. They you know what I mean?
Al Hamilton. And they had said earlier in that quarter, because I was watching the game, and I started watching the game late in the second quarter and then the second half. And one of the commentators said something like, we haven't heard much from Kyle Hamilton. And then when Shedeur came to the game, he was like, all right, cool. I know he's not getting to this read where I'm covering. Like, because he hasn't been able to see these reps. He's like, it's unlikely that he's going to come in and go through 1, 2, 3 and deliver the ball that far down the field. So they just brought him up to the line of scrimmage. And Kyle Hamilton was in the backfield. Every opportunity he took to blitz, he was in the backfield. The Shedeur haters are going to be like, oh, he should have been paying more attention. There's only so much you can get if the circumstance that you're going to be put in a game and you've never been put in it before. He hasn't been put in the game with NFL quality linemen since his first preseason game. Because the second preseason game, they talk about it famously. 4 of those guys didn't make the roster. So the last time he was out there with bad O-line. This time he was out there not with a great plan. They don't have that great of a run game. So it just was a situation where the starter who got the reps all year went down. The rookie came in. He did his best. I think his personality clearly supersedes his I won't say talent. His execution. He's not going to be able to execute a level of his personality. His personality is, it's godlike as far as like how people view him.
Right.
He's not going to be there yet.
Right. And, but like I said, they play the Raiders this weekend. So, you imagine that he'll look somewhat better, even if it's still not good enough for people to say that it was good. It should look better.
If Pete Carroll is petty, he would send Kenny Pickett out for the coin toss.
That would be funny. But also around the league, we saw it, Mr. Logical. I was waiting for that proverbial shoe to drop, and then I go, oh, damn, there's Sam Darnold. 4 picks against the Rams. And yet Seattle still had a chance at the buzzer with a 61-yarder. You know what I mean? Obviously, that's not ideal, but, still had a chance. They held Matt Stafford. He threw 28 passes. They held him to 130 yards. So I saw these videos on Instagram earlier and people talking about how the one and only Emmanuel Forbes allegedly played this great defense on JSN. Like, yeah, if you're allowed to hold, Riley Moss would have got called for some PIs for some of that stuff.
Yeah.
but if you're Seattle, there's no reason to hang your head. You went into SoFi, your quarterback threw 4 picks. You averaged under 4 yards a carry. You lost the game by 2 points and had a chance to win it as time expired. There's no reason to hang your head right now. You just go back to the drawing board and say, all right, Sam, what did you see?
Yeah, let's call Sam Darnold threw the ball 44 times. Let's call 35 pass plays. Let's get to like 30, 35 passes. Let's get some stuff closer to the line of scrimmage. Let's not, fight this uphill battle, because when you see a guy throw 2 picks, even a pro like Sam Darnold, even, your number one quarterback guy who's, kind of being flirted around with the MVP conversation, get back to the basics. All right. O-line, you guys love to run block. You guys love to be maulers. You love to be at the bottom of the pile, mushing defensive ends in the face at the bottom of the pile. I'm going to give you a chance. We're going to go out here this next drive. I'm trying to run 10 run plays on this drive. I think sometimes you just got to have this reset. And I talk about it all the time. Like, I've always just been a fan of football. I've never been a coach. I never coached any of my sons. I never coached the squadron flag football team. I've just always been a fan. And I think sometimes on the sideline, there's so many responsibilities. There needs to be someone that brings it back to center. Like, listen, football is a physical sport. Let's get back to physicality and see if we can just avoid the 3rd and 4th interception. Because if you're in a game, because we're going to talk about Michigan as well, as if you're in a game that's a knockout, drag out game, then you got to throw punches. You can't just be hoping you got to really get in there and brawl. So get back to running the ball. Even I don't care who your running back is. Any good NFL running back can hit a hole if an offensive guard is allowed to maul the shit out of the defensive tackle, which is what they want to do. That's all they want to do. They don't want to pass block all game long. That's exhausting. These guys are way too athletic on the other side of the ball. If I'm a guard, I'm 6'3", 330. You got a defensive end. He's 6'5", 265. He's athletic. Yeah. He's not Myles Garrett. Let me pancake him 6 or 7 times in this drive to the point maybe he gets up, slaps me in the head. Now we got 15 more yards. That's how that stuff happens. You have to assert your dominance. Dropping back and throwing passes is not how you do it. But yet, for some reason, NFL teams do that. We're going to talk about another guy who threw 57 passes. But, that's what I mean. Is football is not a cute sport. But yet everyone wants to drop all these cute-ass plays.
So question, and I ain't trying to be disrespectful, but are the Rams the favorite in the NFC now?
Yeah, I think they have to be 8-2 MVP level play out of your quarterback. The dynamic duo wide receiver. Devontae Adams has double-digit touchdowns this year. Puka Nacua, granted, he's on a crazy pace, which he probably won't make it to 1,999 yards, but of course he's on pace for that. So I like your opportunities there.
I think they're
they have to be the favorite.
Yeah, I think Chris Shula is going to be somebody's head coach next year. So speaking of the team that I guess other people would say are the favorites, are the Eagles just trying to do their impersonation of the 2000 Ravens or something?
It was another game, like I just said. Someone, when you have a head coach like Dan Campbell, he can't call the plays. It's just because I think he's an aggressive coach. I think the players like him, but you need a logical filter somewhere. And I think an offensive coordinator who doesn't have the job security of the head coach would have punted the ball in many of those situations or kicked the field goal. I know the wins were crazy. And he was kicking, he was going for it on fourth down as if they weren't going to get the ball back in a reasonable point in the game. It wasn't like he went for it with like 4 minutes left in the game and they didn't get it and they got to stop Philly and then they went for it again. It was like third quarter. I think at one point the score was 3-0 Philly. They went for one.
It reminded me a lot of that NFC Championship game against San Francisco that they should have put away. Yeah, that's what it reminded me of.
It should have been somebody else saying, hey, we're going to punt this one, Dan.
But you know what? I had an epiphany. So years ago, you know, they made this trade with the Rams, you know, Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford. And I was of the opinion of, hey, the Rams could win a Super Bowl with Jared Goff. And I still believe that to this moment. I don't want to let this result cloud my judgment. But what I saw in this game, that's why the Rams traded Jared Goff. That's what I saw in this game.
I don't think it was a poor game. I think it was a highly defensive game. It was a windy game. Some of my coworkers were at the game.
I think that is
a lot of wind turned to rain.
There's some things that you don't do as a vet that's been in the league as long.
It was a lot of throws that were hitting guys in the hands. Like that, he threw the touchdown at Jameson Williams, but he runs and grabs the jumps on the goalpost and makes the extra point a 48-yard field goal. So like little things like that, like the game would have been 7-6, momentum, Detroit. But you go out, you make the extra point 15 yards longer. Now it was 6-6. The game's different at that point. Philly was out there force feeding the ball to AJ Brown, excuse me, wrong color. And it was clear.
Always about color with you guys.
Listen, it is what it is. We live in a colorful world. So Saquon, like Bigsby came in the game and took a handoff, and the hole you could have driven a Cadillac through. I think he probably got like 11 to 12, maybe 13 yards in his friend. And I was like, Saquon's probably thinking, where that at when I get the ball?
Speaking of which, I'm glad you brought that up. How many yards do you think Saquon has this season rushing?
They played 10 games, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 10 games. I'm going to say somewhere around like 609, maybe.
662. How many yards per carry do you think he averages?
Like 3.2, 3.4, something like that.
3.8. And, you know, so like, was last year his Thanos year? You know, like, hey, we did it. What did it cost? Everything.
Everything. Yeah.
You know, so like, as I look at this, you know, Detroit's in danger, you know, of not making the playoffs themselves. Because we talked about this a couple of weeks ago where Detroit is beating up on your Washingtons, you know, and your teams of that ilk. But then when they meet up with these Green Bays, these Phillies, Kansas City, they become ineffective, you know. So They get the Giants this week, so they should get back on track. But looking at Philly here, Philly's on cruise control right now. You know, Dallas just hit 4 wins yesterday, and they got that ugly tie. You know, Washington's at 3 wins. We probably won't see Jaden Daniels the rest of the year.
That tie's a half win at least.
Yeah. The Giants are still at 2 wins. So I wonder, and this is the next question, you know, is Philly in danger because the division is pretty much already wrapped up that they're going to turn into that team that when we get to the playoffs, can you take a punch because it's been so long since you got hit?
I think the issue with Philly is that they're gonna need to play a game where they look like Philly. Like their 31 to 35 points comes easily. They're gonna need a game to where AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts get on the same page. They're gonna need probably even two of those games. They can win a lot of games 20 to 10, 17 to 10, 17 to 13. They can win a lot of games that way simply because the other team is going to press because Philly's going to be able to throw so many things at you defensively.
Jalen Phillips, right?
That's like he comes in and it looks like he's been playing there all year. And I said to Chris in our group chat, I was like, the first game he's gonna come out, have like a sack and a half and a forced fumble, and it's gonna be like, well, that's another deal that worked.
You know what's crazy
it's working 2 weeks in a row.
What's crazy is, as big as Nakobe Dean is, it looked like he out here watching Champ Bailey videos. You know what I'm saying? He out in the flat daring Jahmyr Gibbs to run at him. Like he's out here chasing receivers.
He was like, listen, throw your hands up the ball and hit one of them.
There you go. So
Tampa, that's the thing that Philly has top tier young defensive talent at every level between Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. Even though both of them should have been Falcons, they were sitting right there on the draft board and they fucking play right down the street in Athens. Nakobe Dean, Nolan Smith, all these guys are right there. They're right there, and they were all right there in draft positions where. And
guess
all
what?
Four of those guys could be wearing the same color jersey
and guess
in
what?
the same state playing pro football. But that
and
didn't
guess
happen.
What? He didn't go to Georgia, but Jihad Campbell ain't that far away either. You know what I'm saying?
He played a game in Athens.
But Tampa and Buffalo, we talked about Josh Allen a little bit earlier. I don't know what that was he tried to do from his own 8-yard line and basically Rick Barry the football to his receiver. But you brought this up earlier in the season. You've been talking about it all year. Buffalo is way too dependent on him, and that's going to come and bite them. And if Tampa, I don't know. Like I heard somebody earlier say Buffalo has this revamped defense. And I'm sitting there going, hey, they gave up 106 rushing yards to Sean Tucker. They gave up 106 receiving yards to Sean Tucker. They had Baker out here, running around. They gave up 32 points. I don't know what this revamped defense is. And if they don't get Dalton Kincaid back sometime soon, I don't know how sustainable this offense is going to be. We talked about Keon Coleman not playing the other day. Palmer's been hurt. So you would think we would see a lot more Shakir. But we're not getting any Shakir. These guys just can't separate. And I think that as long as Buffalo doesn't have Ed Oliver, they got no hope to stop the run.
Yeah, and they're losing defensive players. They lost a guy against Kansas City. They said they feel that was an Achilles tear.
Yeah, that was Hoyt.
Hoyt. So that's just that leads into my too Josh Allen dependent, because at some point, like Keon Coleman got benched for being late. I don't know how late. I don't know why he was late. I don't know what his excuse was for being late. But Jamar Chase isn't getting benched.
Well, he's getting suspended.
We're getting suspended, but that's by the league. He's not so I think if I believe they probably treat it like, you're not giving us that much anyway for us to give you the leeway of being late.
Right.
The whole Emmitt Smith, if the fourth string running back falls asleep, you cut him. Emmitt falls asleep, you nudge him. I think he's in the middle there, and that goes to show you just how much they really don't have offensively in Buffalo. Like I said, if you let Josh Allen run around and make plays, he's gonna make them. Like he has the arm inside of 40 yards to the goal line to make you pay as a defense.
Mm-hmm.
So if he's rolling out and Shakir or he points and Shavers or Coleman or whomever can get behind the defense at the 15, 20-yard line, and he can fire it off anywhere from the 40 to the goal line, he can get it there. So if he knows that, he knows you're looking out for that, he can make plays outside the pocket. You gotta contain him. And if you can't, you're gonna give up 6 touchdowns to him.
All right, you ready to bust this move with me?
Let's hear it. Get out.
Talk to me. Talk to me.
I quit. Yeah. So
I mean, we talked the other day about how Bryce Young only had one 200-yard game this season going into that game. How about a franchise record 448?
See, the passing yards, like the number is crazy high. And I get that it is high. But he wasn't really like slicing and dicing Atlanta. One guy, this guy, I think his name Ahmad Brooks, he got beat 2 plays in a row, and then they sent them back out to take the kickoff, and he fumbled it. Once again, I never worked the sideline, but in that moment, someone needs to say, hey, get 35 out of the game. He's rattled. He just got beat. Back-to-back plays. One went for a big touchdown, Xavier Legette. Get him out of the game because it's in his head. And if he gets the ball in his hand on his kickoff, he's going to do too much, trying to make a play, trying to make up for the fact that he just gave up I think he gave up 55 yards passing in those 2 plays.
Yeah, he got skinned
Came
like
out,
one of those raccoons.
And he fumbled. He got beat on, I think, the Tet cross, over route. He got beat on that. So it's just Atlanta had 21 first half points. Again. And then, same thing against Buffalo. 21 first half points. They only get 3 in the second half. There's nothing consistent to lean on offensively, which then in turn allows the other team, because Atlanta just blitzes. That's how they get home. James Pierce Jr. is working out. I saw a podcast called the Rundown Podcast, another Atlanta guy, and he was saying, hey, don't worry about the fact we don't have our first round pick next year. We got James Pierce Jr. and it's working. We have Jalen Walker and it's working. The problem is the way to really deploy those guys, somebody has to eat up blocks in the middle, and that doesn't happen. So it ends up being Caden Ellis has to blitz, or J.D. Bertrand, who can't cover anyone in space, he has to blitz. And then Raheem Morris is just on the sideline once again, not managing timeouts.
All right, so
not managing the clock, not forcing Carolina to use their final timeout. It just it's complete discombobulation in the franchise.
Rate this quote from 1 to 10. Quote.
Oh no, don't tell me. There's no losing team. They're just losing coaches.
No.
Oh God, when he said that, I was like, "Yo, fire him."
Quote. We've lost a bunch of games in a row in tight moments, and you got to find a way to win those games. It's definitely on me. That's what you're talking about. There's no such thing as a losing team. There's only a losing leader, and I'm the leader, and we lost. Unquote. So I don't know, man. But hey, Michael Penix out for the year now.
Great guy. I think he's a great motivator of men. I think he'll do a great job as a nonprofit executive director of people who want to be head coaches, but he is not doing a good job of it.
And so Michael Penix is out for the year now, and Drake London's hurt.
I mean, the season's a wrap. The season's been a wrap for weeks for me, because there's nothing that you can rest your hat on. This week, we got New Orleans coming up.
Oh, it's at the House of Horrors too, ain't it?
No, I'm not sure exactly, because we haven't played New Orleans yet this year, so I'm not sure exactly where it is. But I'm gonna pick my team.
Yeah, it's at the House of Horrors.
I don't know exactly what we can do other than, like I said, I was gonna do the whole call out the plays, but I couldn't get the game on TV until it was in crunch time. But once again, Michael Penix doesn't go under center. As a defense, if I'm coming into the game knowing that you're gonna operate out of shotgun and pistol, and out of pistol, you're just running stretch plays to the left or the right, or you're doing a little fake and you're trying to hit the wide receiver in the flat. I don't have to, you don't have to game plan for anything. It's how am I sitting here in my bedroom doing this podcast every single week saying this same thing, but yet you guys are in the building all week with the expectation that you're building a game plan, and none of you recognize that the fact that Michael Penix doesn't go under center hurts your team offensively. So Kirk Cousins gets in the game, they're doing the same pistol shit. I'm like, yo, put him on the center.
Right.
So I'm thinking, like, does Zach Robinson not have any I formation plays? Does he not have any plays on the center? Like, how are you offensive coordinator and you don't have these plays in your playbook? And I don't think they do. That shows like a level of just it's reprehensible how poorly constructed and organized it as an organization are. And I banged on the Saints early this year, and I'm pretty sure the Saints fans are going to come after me. But I think Atlanta's operating a lot like the Saints. Just not a serious franchise. It could be more than one.
So, the 49ers currently are the 7th seed. They're half a game up on Detroit and a game behind them, the Carolina Panthers, who they play this weekend. So, Mr. Logical, I'm just going to ask you one question about this game. We don't got to get too deep into it, but how do you break the NFL record for completions and score 22 points?
A lot of dink and dunk. I don't know. It's just you should never call 57 passes in a game.
Especially when it's not even your day one starter at quarterback.
And he's not even like a gunslinging quarterback. He is a dink and dunk quarterback. He is 28 to 35 passes a game quarterback. Like, he always has been.
Maybe. You know what I'm saying? And then Jamar Chase suspended a game. Spit or no spit.
He spit on him. Dog, it's like you are one of the best wide receivers in football. Jalen Ramsey is one of the best defensive players in football. And you both talk the Hall of Fame level shit. So when you guys are face to face in a rivalry game, there's gonna be every camera on that half of the field is going to be on you. The camera above, the camera on the sideline, the still photography.
Yeah.
Like, they're all 4 and 8K cameras for him to be like, I didn't spit. Like, dog, we can see it. It's broad daylight.
As somebody that used to wear a grill, you definitely got spit all up in there. You know what I'm saying? You definitely got spit all up in there. Hey, so Aaron Rodgers looks like he's going to probably miss some time. The Mason Rudolph era has begun again. Oh, Pittsburgh. So all I'm going to say about Spain is Miami didn't want to win and Washington couldn't win. And then finally, Mr. Logical, what in the hell was that? They said it was Justin Herbert, but I don't recognize who that was.
Well, I mean, I guess the $250 million is really like, messing with his personality and his output. But like I said, everyone had him pegged as the next guy.
Yeah.
Not me though.
Yeah.
Not me. Yeah. Not me.
Yeah. And then you got
I think he looks the part.
Texans and Titans, in a game that was way closer than it should be. But shout out to Davis Mills for getting 2 wins while CJ Stroud is out. Dallas held Ashton Genty to 6 rushes for 7 yards last night. Geno was the leading rusher with 14 yards. It's time for George Pickens to get his money. Second leading receiver in the NFL, 9 for 144 last night. Pay the man. And then
there's Brian talking about, hey, man, just take less money and stay in Dallas.
No, thank you. And shout out to the one and only Justin Fields. I owe him an apology because he more than doubled his passing yards this week. 116 yards. He's on the road to 150 passing yards.
It's like just as a fan, right? For the price of these tickets and the price of this merchandise and these TV deals and the size of these contracts, you got to put a better product on the field. I think a few teams are going to have to clean house. I'm shooting my favorite American cities, New York and Las Vegas. All 3 of those teams are going to have to clean house, start from scratch. And then my personal favorite team, the Falcons, got to clean house and start from scratch and be honest. You don't have the pieces move your best defensive piece that can go to a contender and help them and try to, get a second or third. Maybe if you're lucky, you got a guy that's going to get a first. If you're Atlanta, I'm not paying Kyle Pitts. I'm trying to move him to get a pick if I can. Same thing with the Jets. I'm moving Garrett Wilson. I'm moving Breece Hall. I'm moving on from Justin Fields, whatever that costs me. I'm probably moving on from Aaron Glenn. The Raiders got to move on from Chip Kelly and Pete Carroll. That just was a bad combination. Two old guys trying to run a young man's league. That's why it's so predictable.
Yeah.
Just like I get the NFL is very difficult, but some of these hires, some of these payouts, and some of these contracts is like none of that's making any sense. And we shouldn't be able to pick that apart as a couple of podcasters who just happen to do some time in the Air Force. We shouldn't be able to look at your team and be like, yo, none of this made any sense. That hire was bad. We talked about it preseason. It's not like we're just jumping on the bandwagon now. It's like, that's a bad hire.
All right, so I just want to talk about a couple teams real quick. And this is not a hating moment. I'm just trying to make a point. So we hear about the SEC, how deep it is, right? All right. Vanderbilt this year, has not played. Oklahoma, Georgia, Ole Miss, or Texas A&M. Ole Miss hasn't played Bama, Tennessee, Missouri, A&M, or Texas. Tennessee did play Bama and Georgia, but their best win is probably Mississippi State. And look, I'm done with the Texas thing, okay? I've heard people all day talking about if they beat A&M, they're 9-3, they should still get consideration for a playoff spot. I'm done with Texas. Since Vince Young, Texas has won 2 conference titles. Out of 27 years in the Big 12, Texas has won 4 Big 12 titles. Get out of here with the Texas. They're losers. I don't want any more. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, let's get right to it, Mr. Logical. We got the late release today, so, we're reacting to this in real time. So I'm going to give you the rankings first, then we'll look at the bracket. All right. So actually, I'm going to start from the bottom. So, all right, here we go. So 25 through 19, and just that. Got the Sun Devils jumping into the poll for the first time. You got the Green Wave, Houston Cougars, Missouri, who I just talked about, who doesn't have a good win either. Illinois, Tennessee, and Virginia at 19. See, I told you Michigan down here at 18. Texas at 17, Georgia Tech, USC, Vandy, Miami, 6th placed in the ACC, but they're the highest ranked ACC team. Utah number 12, BYU number 11, go Utes.
That's gonna be the biggest. That's gonna be the biggest FU to like pure college football playoff fans.
And then you got Bama at 10 coming off the loss to Oklahoma, Notre Dame at 9, Oklahoma at 8, Oregon 7, Ole Miss 6, Tech at 5, Georgia 4, A&M 3, Indiana 2, Ohio State 1. So before I pull up the bracket here, is there anything that stands out to you about any of these rankings?
I think, and I've always felt this way when it came to the ranking system, especially when it was 4 teams. Once you get past 12, it's just pretty much interchangeable. You can move any of these teams around. Like if you had USC 16 and Michigan 14 and Utah 15, I don't think anybody be up in arms about it, because what it really boils down to, it, like I said, when it was 4 teams, it was like who's in the top 8 to 10. I think now, like, it always felt like they keep a lot of SEC schools mixed into this 12 to 20 space. So the top 10 SEC schools will be able to argue their best wins, or they have 5 top 25 wins, even though 3 or 4 teams start out in the top 25 preseason, and it takes about 3 weeks for them to kind of just be bled out if they're not that good of a team, but it still will count as a top 25 win at the time. Like little stuff like that.
So look at number 22. And I'm bringing them up for a reason. Not because I'm picking on the SEC, but I'm just trying to make a point. You see number 22, right?
Missouri, correct.
Who they play this week?
I imagine that it's probably somebody like an Ole Miss or Texas A&M, somebody that they're trying to elevate.
It's Oklahoma.
Who they
They're
just put in
playing.
8.
They're playing Oklahoma this week.
So Oklahoma wins. They get another top 25 win.
Yep, exactamundo. You know what I mean? Then you got, but as you look around, saying you see this here, you look at Tennessee, right? So they play Florida. Theoretically, they should win that game, even though they haven't won in the swamp since 2003. But then Georgia and Bama, who just lost, and Oklahoma all beat Tennessee. So that's Georgia, Oklahoma, and Alabama all beat Tennessee. Tennessee's best win this year is Mississippi State. I know I'm not the only person that sees this, So then, like I said, Miami is the top ranked ACC team, even though the actual ACC leader is 3 spots below them. You got Texas down here at 17, still creeping around, and that's why they're having this conversation about could a 9-3 Texas get in, because you figure USC plays Oregon this weekend. Vandy still has to go to Tennessee. Georgia Tech plays Georgia next week. Utah and BYU, you hope one of them lose. So now, if some of these teams clear out, you get Texas back in this 11, 12, 13 area. And you can say
it's going to be Miami is going to be the team that they put in. I know Texas is a sexy pick. The quarterback, the coach, the school colors, the history, so forth and so on. But they're probably going to sneak in whoever wins the ACC and Miami. There's only so much bullshit that the committee is going to be able to justify when it comes to picking the 12 teams. They're locked into certain obligations, but the essential, the de facto at large is only so much they're going to be able to go to the podium and say honestly is like, we felt Texas was better than ACC champ Virginia or whoever, ends up winning the ACC. It's going to have to be like some BS, expressed publicly in order to like just kind of squeeze a 9-3 team in. But we'll see. It all plays out. We got a couple weeks left to where we'll get some definitive answers. But when it comes to the selection of the 12 teams, there's going to be some bullshit. We'll be outraged for like 24 hours and 30 minutes. And then we'll just settle back into, Ohio State is going to win it all anyway. So it doesn't matter if Tulane's in or if Miami's in.
All right, well, here's our bracket from our good friends at Sporting News. So, of course, you got your top 4 seeds. We talked about Ohio State, Georgia, A&M, pop up, Indiana. And then, of course, over on the right side there, like you got OU, Notre Dame in the 8-9, Texas Tech, Tulane in the 5-12. We'll get back to that in a second. 6-11, Ole Miss in Miami. And then, of course, the 7-10, Oregon and Alabama. So, like I mentioned, we got Oregon, USC this weekend. OU's got Missouri and closes out with LSU. Notre Dame is pretty much on cruise control, in my opinion. Ohio State gets Michigan. A&M gets Texas next week. So there's still a lot here, So with all that being said, before I go into these scenarios, is there anything about the bracket that you see that stands out to you?
Last year we talked about the number 1 team having like the toughest route.
Hardest path. Yeah.
Yeah. So, because last year Ohio State was 8.
Yes. And Oregon was the 1 seed, the only undefeated team in the country. Yeah.
So I'm trying to see here who has an easier path. And I think the 1 seed has a difficult path again. I definitely think the 8-9, 5-12, 1-4 side of the bracket is filled with more. Well, I mean, aside from Tulane, because I mean they're going to be out talented in certain positions when they play against Georgia. But I think Ole Miss, Miami has a couple losses. Oregon has the one. Am I correct?
Indiana, yep. So you would get
Yeah.
Indiana the rematch if they beat Alabama the same way that Ohio State and Oregon rematched last year.
Yeah. So then you would get. I mean, and Bama's a tough team. Just watching them, and you talked about how they couldn't run the ball, and I watched a few of their games, but this one I watched, pretty much in its entirety. Their inability to run the ball was glaring.
Yeah, and that's why I thought that Oklahoma matched up well.
It was like they were just running into the wall. I'm like, cut it back. They're washing the whole thing to your right. Cut it back to the left, and it's you and a linebacker in space. But they were running to, like, if it was a stretch play to the right, the guy was just running into the pile. I'm like, yo, dog, cut that back. The Bama old line had it washed out so many times, and they didn't cut it back and find an open space to get you the 5
Bama
yards.
still
When
wins
they did,
that
they
game.
got like 10 yards.
Bama still wins that game if they don't throw a pick six, and even without the run game. And that's why I was telling you when we did our preview, I think Oklahoma matched up well because the only thing that really changed from last year to this year was Oklahoma upgraded at quarterback, and Alabama didn't have Jalen Milroe anymore, but everything else was pretty much the same as their matchup. The only thing that changed was the location, so that's why I thought Alabama would win, but I thought that OU, had a shot. So, and as we come off of that and go, here we go, yo. So what's the scenario? So as we go there, let's take it from the top. I'm not going to get into all this because some of this will rectify itself next week because, of course, the SEC is doing their cupcake thing this week. So not much is going to get settled. So I'm going to take it from the top with the American Conference because right now Tulane holds that G5 spot, in the bracket. So here we go, Mr. Logical. The American has 4 teams with one loss in conference. That's Navy, North Texas, Tulane, and ECU. USF has 2 losses, but they beat North Texas, but lost to Navy last week. Tulane beat East Carolina. North Texas beat Navy. So I say all that to say that if Navy loses to Memphis, they're eliminated. If all 4 of those teams with one loss wins out, it would be Navy, it would be UNT, so North Texas against either Navy or Tulane. So this is where the Army-Navy game takes a whole different highlight because Army could knock Navy out of the American Conference Championship game.
And they will love that.
Yes. So Tulane is in as long as they win both of their last 2 games and one or Navy or North Texas loses one. So Tulane is probably the most likely in, and that's probably why they're in the bracket right now, even though they have the 2 losses. They do have wins over Duke and Northwestern this year. In the ACC, Georgia Tech beat Pitt this weekend. You're going to Charlotte because after this weekend, all they got left is the game against Georgia that pisses Mr. Logical off because it's in the compressor. But if Georgia,
well, I mean, at least that's in the same state. Like I understand that piece. That's in the same state at least. But if they were playing their championship game at that stadium that they built out in Tampa or Orlando, then I'd be like, what the fuck?
Yeah. So Georgia Tech in with a win this weekend. If they lose, they need Virginia and SMU to lose once. Virginia only has Virginia Tech left. So if Virginia Tech wins this week, if Virginia wins this week and Georgia Tech wins, you're likely looking at Virginia and Georgia Tech. If Virginia loses, then they need SMU to lose one of their last 2, which is at home against Louisville this weekend, at Cal next week. So those are your contenders in the ACC. We'll get into Louisville and Miami if we have to next week, because right now there's just a lot going on, and I don't want to waste
Miami could
time.
essentially just be sitting back and
watching teams lose
and watching the dominoes fall for everybody else, and then slide in
right
at the 11th seed in the playoffs.
Right, because Miami has something that the rest of these teams don't have. That win over Notre Dame. So that's going to keep Miami, as long as Notre Dame doesn't lose, that's going to keep Miami propped up. So, like I said, you look at the bracket right now, they're in. None of these teams that I just mentioned for the ACC championship game are in the current bracket right now.
The 5 teams ahead of Miami in the ACC are not listed in the bracket, but Miami is.
Correct. All right. Big 12 could end up in a 6-way tie. So Texas Tech, simple. Beat West Virginia this weekend, you're in. 4-7 West Virginia. BYU, if they win both their last 2 games against Cincinnati and UCF, they're in. So we could get a Texas Tech BYU rematch. That would be the cleanest matchup as far as people just do their job and get into the championship game. Utah needs to win their final 2 games. Go Utes. They're playing both Kansas schools, but then they would need BYU to lose out and for Cincinnati to lose once. Houston needs to run the table, but then they need Utah, Cincinnati, and Arizona State to lose, and they need BYU to lose twice. So not likely.
Yes.
Arizona State needs to win out, but have Utah, Houston, and BYU lose. Or if Texas Tech loses and we get that 6-way tie, the championship game would be Arizona State and Texas Tech, because Arizona State has the tiebreaker with the head-to-head over Texas Tech. And then finally, Cincinnati needs to win out, have Utah and Houston lose. And then what up, Rez? And then they need Arizona to beat Arizona State specifically. They need that specific result. All right. The Big Ten. Saying just chilling, man.
What's
Can't
going
call
on,
it.
Rez?
The Big Ten. Indiana beat Purdue. And you're in the Big Ten title game. Ohio State beat Rutgers and Michigan. Now, this is where it gets fun. We got USC and Oregon this weekend, live from Autzen Stadium. If Oregon wins and Michigan beats Ohio State, Oregon gets into the Big Ten championship game with a rematch against Indiana due to playing better conference opponents than Ohio State or Michigan. USC, if USC wins this weekend against Oregon and then they beat UCLA, they have a head-to-head tiebreaker over Michigan. So if Michigan were to beat Ohio State, that gets real interesting with that 3-way pause, I guess, with that 3-way between Michigan, Oregon, and Ohio State. And it comes down to conference percentage. But more than likely, in most scenarios, Michigan has the weakest schedule. So even if they beat Ohio State, they would most likely be the odd man out. In the SEC, Texas A&M, you beat Texas next week, you're in. Alabama, you win the Iron Bowl, you're in. So the cleanest scenario is for A&M and Bama to win next week, and they would play each other. If one of them loses, Georgia gets in to play the other. So if Alabama loses, we get Georgia A&M. If A&M loses, we get Georgia Bama, because Georgia has already wrapped up SEC play. They're just waiting on their Georgia Tech game. All right. Ole Miss is still alive, but barely, because they lost to Georgia head-to-head. So when Georgia beat Texas the other day, that put Ole Miss in a very bad position. So Ole Miss needs A&M and Bama to lose. And then they could get a Georgia rematch in the SEC title game. So those are the 4 teams in the SEC. As far as the other conferences go, James Madison is already in the Sun Belt Conference Championship game, waiting on either Troy or Southern Miss.
Okay.
Unless Southern Miss loses twice, then that opens the door for Arkansas State or Troy as well. The MAC, we got 6 teams alive. We'll cover it next week. You know, saying in the Mountain West, you got San Diego State in front with 1 conference loss, and then you got Fresno, Boise, New Mexico, UNLV, and Hawaii with 2 losses. We'll cover it next week. So those are your scenarios.
So I'm thinking CFP, Big 12, SEC, Big 10.
Okay.
Who doesn't want to play in the conference championship game because not playing still locks them into the CFP? Well, remember how Bama did that for a couple of years where they didn't play for the conference championship, but they were like 11-1, and they were pretty much a shoe-in to be one of the 4 teams. Well, this is the problem.
This is the problem. Theoretically, if you're BYU, you might not want to play Texas Tech again, but you have to win out because if you lose at all, the CFP is going to pull Big 12 on you and you're not getting in. You know, so a 2-loss BYU isn't getting in.
Correct.
You know, but if you're
How about Miami? Miami's sitting there in the ACC, so they're probably they want
Miami's
to be on
on cruise control. Miami's on cruise control. You know, you went out and you just sit back, hope Notre Dame doesn't lose, and you're already in the bracket as of today. So so we know that the committee thinks highly of you. So if you're Miami, y'all can have the ACC championship right now. You ain't never won it since joining the conference in 2003 anyway. You know what I mean? Now, if you're Virginia or Georgia Tech, you don't get that. You got to get in there and you just got to win the ACC. Now, if you're Georgia Tech, theoretically, going off of what we saw last year, because remember, SMU got to the ACC championship game last year, lost to Clemson.
Played tough.
And they got in. I don't think that happens for Georgia Tech this year because SMU last year lost to BYU.
They went with 1 loss.
Right, and it was to a good team.
Was Clemson. Yeah.
Right, to whereas Georgia Tech's in this scenario where your other loss would be to an NC State team that might not even make a bowl. So we can't justify that. If you're Virginia, you know what I mean? You've already lost, 2 games that you couldn't afford to lose, so you can't lose again. If you're in the Big 10, if I'm Oregon, I just want to beat USC and Washington, and y'all can have all that. Because if I beat USC and Washington, I'm in there. 1 loss, they're not keeping me out.
Correct.
You know what I mean? And then you brought up Michigan pre-show. If I'm Michigan and I beat Ohio State and I get the short end of the stick and don't play for the Big 10 title, cool. I'm a 2-loss team with a win over Ohio State. One of my losses is to Oklahoma, and the other one's to USC.
I'm in there at 10.
I'm in there.
And maybe Miami is out.
Yeah, if you're Ole Miss, just beat Mississippi State. And watch.
And you're in there at 6.
You're in there at 6. Just watch Bama and A&M play it out. Or if one of them fall, welcome to the party, Georgia. Oklahoma they can't play for the SEC title.
So Ole Miss is pretty much, you beat Mississippi State. Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss running Rebels are locked into the CFP.
I think they're still in even if they lose to Mississippi State because remember, they got the head-to-head over Oklahoma. You know what I mean? So even if Oklahoma wins out, so this is that doomsday scenario you were talking about last week. So if you get Bama and A&M in the SEC title game, and this was before Bama lost, but if Bama beats A&M in the SEC championship game, they're both getting in.
So Bama, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Ole Miss,
and Georgia
are all in. So that's 5 of the 12.
I think so.
And then
as of where we stand today.
And then whatever kind of matriculates with the ACC situation, they could try to slide Texas or Vanderbilt in.
Yeah, because well, the question is, the question is, what happens if Georgia Tech beats Georgia? Like, I think Georgia still gets in anyway. But now we bring up that other question, right? So if Georgia Tech beats Pitt this weekend, they get to the ACC title game, they beat Georgia next weekend. Now you got a one-loss Georgia Tech. You go to the ACC championship game and lose. Am I going to tell this team that just beat Georgia you can't get in?
And Georgia's going to get in.
Right. Those are the things. Those are the games that we got to play. I think they will tell Georgia Tech no, but that's just me. You know what I mean? But then, like I said, Oklahoma,
that's when people are going to be like, we got to go to 16 teams.
Yep. And
like, be honest about the 12. Just be honest about the 12. Don't keep putting all these things in place, because there's going to be a scenario, i.e., people talk about, I can't believe Notre Dame is ahead of Miami in the polls. Well, one team is on an 8-game win streak, and they lost their first 2 games. And the other team, kind of faltered a little bit in the middle of the season, but they're back on track. You can't just catapult them because, hey, in September, you beat them.
See, I'm going to get to that.
Like, I'm playing better than you right now. Like, I'm playing better than you right now.
I disagree a little bit, but let me.
How?
Hold on. Let me come around the corner a little bit.
I don't think it's like is that simple. Like, oh, Notre Dame lost to Miami, so they should just be below Miami. It's like, well, I do, but like I said, we'll come around. Let me get around the corner real quick. So if you're Notre Dame, right? Your 2 losses are to Miami and A&M. A&M still undefeated. Number 3 right now. Saying Miami obviously lost to Louisville. They lost to SMU, who both have 3 losses in what would be considered to be a weak ACC. But this is where the committee steps on themselves. And this is me coming around the corner now, because the committee says that they look at this freshly every week. So every week, the data theoretically should change. So when I get to that final ranking at the end of the season, I'm looking at the season as a whole versus looking at tiny windows. So if I'm looking at the season as a whole, then that head-to-head has to matter, because y'all still ended up with the same record and they beat you. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying that automatically Miami should be ahead of Notre Dame, but I think it should be up for discussion. But if you look at the season as a whole, like I said, from your perspective and your vantage point, it said when you say looking at the season as a whole and the season ends, you have to factor in the head-to-head matchup. When I hear that, I look at like, how'd your season play out?
Okay.
So early in the year, couple missteps. You're 0-2 Notre Dame.
Okay.
You lost on the 2-point conversion, I believe, against Texas A&M, and they missed the
extra point. Yeah.
And you had a shot. You had a shot with Miami, so it wasn't like you can look completely discombobulated. So now, as the season played out, I would say Miami's 2 losses. Like, if I'm arguing for Notre Dame, like if I'm on the committee, I'm like, I'll look at the 2 losses that Miami has to 3 lost teams. Like, okay, Miami just was beneficiary of they squeaked out a win against Notre Dame, and then the truth came out when they played these other tough ACC matchups, and they lost both. And they're 6th in their conference here after 10 games of being played. So that's how I'll look at it. Like, okay, Notre Dame is shooting up the charts after they righted their ship in September, whereas Miami, their ship is still kind of rocky, and they're not in a position to show me going forward that the midseason missteps have been corrected, because they won't get their championship game. They won't be 1st or 2nd in their conference. If you're a 3rd, then maybe you can make that argument. But like, you won't be able to show me like, oh, we're back. Like, I don't think you have that game left on your schedule that says we're back versus the 0-2 Notre Dame team.
You
know what I'm saying?
You know why I'm smiling right now?
You got something up your sleeve. I saw you pull that marker out.
Because remember, I started this conversation with Vandy didn't play, Missouri didn't play, whatever I said at the beginning of this whole conversation. Check it out. So, I don't know. I'm trying to get this in the camera. I don't know. My light is in the way. But basically, what I got here, I got Miami and Notre Dame at 10-2.
Yeah, right there. Leave it right there.
I got Miami and Notre Dame at 10-2, right? Now, this is where you get into the fun part. Miami's best win, Notre Dame. Notre Dame's best win, USC. So in that scenario, what I'm doing for Notre Dame is giving them good SEC losses, because I'm saying that your value is based on who you lost to, because my best win is better than yours, and it's you. You know what I'm saying? But this is the other part of it. And this is where college football, because the unbalanced schedules, you know what I mean? So to your point, right, about Miami being sixth in the ACC. So in the ACC, Miami played Louisville. They played SMU. Guess who didn't? Georgia Tech didn't play either one. Virginia beat Louisville, so Virginia would have that leg up in theory. But Virginia didn't play SMU. Virginia didn't play Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech didn't play Virginia. Miami didn't play Virginia. So now, as I'm scrambling this all around, it goes back to the SEC point that I made at the beginning. Because if I'm Missouri, I lost to Alabama. You know what I mean? And I lost to Vanderbilt. You know what I mean? A&M didn't play Vanderbilt. A&M didn't play Alabama. A&M didn't play Georgia. A&M didn't play Ole Miss. So this is why it comes out this way, is because of the unbalanced scheduling. So if I'm Miami,
But I like the unbalanced schedule. I get that, but the ultimate, Al Davis, just win, baby. If you just win all your games, I don't think it matters who you didn't play, because you beat everybody you played.
All right, once
you lose, you don't get that same benefit of the doubt as the undefeated teams. We saw it happen with Miami last year. Miami was sitting good until they had, I think it was a 1 point loss. 1 or 2 point loss because
they had a 21-point loss. They had a 21-point lead against Syracuse in the last game of the season and lost by 3.
Yeah.
All right.
But
so
once you lose, I think you lose the benefit of the doubt. I'm not saying it's a perfect system, but I know that's how it goes. If you are winning, we talk about it with teams like Boise State. We talked about it with teams like Utah. These at-large teams for years. As long as you show up undefeated, your coach, your AD, your supporters can go to the podium and say, we beat every team on our schedule. It is not our fault that we don't live between Texas and Florida and play our football game.
I get it, but
once you lose, you lose that piece. You can't say, oh, well, we played 11 good games or 12 good games when we lost one. Once you lose, you're out of you're out of those kind of betting.
All right, now check.
You're not allowed to be in that room. So once you lose, you kind of put it. You leave it up to this very flawed version of expectations.
Definitely,
and this very flawed evaluation system, to the point where you can be upset, but ultimately you have to be upset at yourself, because you put yourself in a position to where I'm no longer in this space to where I can just say, hey, we won. I won my conference. I won. You have to say, oh, I beat this team, and this team only beat this team, which is like a very just
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, and you're not necessarily wrong. This is one of those conversations where there's not really a right or wrong. It's just a what perspective are you looking at it from. And that's what I
mean.
But hold on, let's do this real quick.
Space, it just, when you put yourself in that space to where it's a convoluted, essentially whoever has the loudest voice in the room can guide the conversation with no real guidance. there's no, like, we use AFIs and Air Force. There's no Air Force instruction for this. Now it's just all speculation and conversation and who can make the best argument. That is a dangerous space to be.
It is,
but
let's go through this real quick.
It's hard to advocate for yourself.
Right. But let's go through this real quick and then we'll move on. So you got your Notre Dame 2 losses that we talked about. Combined 4 points, right? So no harm, no foul. All right. So you beat Purdue, right? 2-9 Purdue, who has not won a game in the Big Ten this year. All right. Boise, who's 6-4, lost by 27 to USF, lost to San Diego State, lost to Fresno State. They beat NC State, who's currently 5-5 right now. Now, the good thing you could say is, well, hey, NC State beat Georgia Tech. NC State beat Virginia. But even with those wins, NC State 5-5, 2-4 in the ACC that we call weak. So then you got your good win against USC. They beat Boston College, who is 1-10, to include 0-7 in the ACC. I'll call Navy a decent win because they still alive for their conference title, so I ain't gonna crap on it. Yeah. And then you got a good win against Pitt. Now you're a 35.5 point favorite against Syracuse this weekend. Syracuse, who is 3-7, 1-6 in the ACC, and then you close at Stanford, who's 3-7, 2-5 in the ACC. So, are you really playing better just because you're winning, or is your competition bad for the most part?
Yes, their competition is bad.
But
now, if you look at the NC State win, and you're like, well, NC State beat these two teams in a mediocre ACC. Well, Miami is a picture of mediocrity at the ACC because they're 6th.
I know, but hold on.
So I mean, listen, I'm not advocating for
I'm
not advocating for Notre Dame. I'm just talking about like how the conversation in that space, this space of like, we have losses, we're not a top SEC school,
right?
Why you being there is the problem. Like, and that's the thing is like, you can't argue. I'm not saying you can't. Miami's argument, if they don't make the 12-team playoff, is going to be like, oh, we beat Notre Dame. But it's like, yeah, true indeed. But we know college football, when you lose and who you lose to somehow depends on if they like you or not.
But that's not. But see, but that's the thing.
Works.
That's the thing.
This is the problem. How it goes. And that's,
no, you're right.
But that's the problem.
Because that's what the committee says. The committee says that we look at this freshly every week. So that shouldn't matter theoretically. Like, it shouldn't matter that Miami lost 2 games in 3 weeks. So by the time we get to the end of the season, it shouldn't matter that Miami lost 2 games in a 3-week period 7 weeks ago. You know what I mean? Theoretically. You know what I'm saying? But even looking at Miami here, that USF win is probably somewhat equivalent, at least to the Navy win, even though Navy did just beat USF this weekend. They played Louisville and SMU, like I said, that Georgia Tech didn't play. You know what I mean? Like, and then they got the win over Notre Dame. So like, I don't know. It's just perspective. And they still close with that Pitt team that Notre Dame just beat last week. So the point is that I would say, and this is just me, I would say that the schedules between the two teams are comparable. You know what I'm saying? And I got a head-to-head over you. So if your schedule was way better than mine and I beat you, then we could use strength of schedule to be like, yeah, I was your one hard opponent. But if our schedules are on the same tier and I beat you, I mean, and if you're looking at it week to week, but we'll move on because we, you know what I'm saying? But hey, James Franklin, new head coach at Virginia Tech. Thoughts?
He must like that region. He must like recruiting the Virginia, Pennsylvania, Jersey. Like,
he's from Pennsylvania as well.
Yeah, I think he must like that region. And if you're looking at the LSU job as a possibility, maybe 8-4 in Blacksburg. is the equivalent of 11-1 in LSU, so he can build his program. You probably to get guys to go to Blacksburg, you're probably getting a different type of recruit. Like you're probably getting a guy from the Pennsylvania, the Appalachian area. And it's probably like the same recruiting pool he used when he was recruiting out of Penn State. So I like it. Areas he's familiar with, schools he's familiar with. I know he recruited Jersey a lot. Like he was in, he came to a lot of Jersey games, a lot of highlights of like some of our top kids out of Jersey and him being on the sideline. Hell, Saquon is from Jersey. Or no, he's from PA. But like that, just that region. But Rutgers offered, so just competing for the recruits in this Northeast region, I think it's probably a smart move for him. And it's a good program. I understand. I understand the head-to-head matchup. I do. I am not arguing against it. I'm simply saying the committee and college football has shown us for years that this is what they do. So that is my logic. My logic is not the head-to-head matchup. That's not the concern. It's good loss, bad loss, when you lost, who's hot, and then ultimately who can sell tickets. Those are the 5 key things. That's my logical outlook on it, based on like how they have presented this information to me. Do I think 11-1 Boise throughout all these years could have competed in a lot of these bigger bowl games? Could they have played Oklahoma more often in bowl games? We saw what happened when they had Adrian Peterson on one side. Jared Zambrowski still beat that Oklahoma team. So I think they can compete. But as far as what the committee has said to us and what matters to them, the head-to-head isn't the thing. We talked about it when Alabama got in the first year when they didn't – the first time they got into the conference, to the 14 playoff, when they didn't play for their conference championship. Nick Saban went on TV and said, no one ever said you had to win your conference to be in. That wasn't a rule. So then we learned in that moment that, if you're on the outside looking in, it's probably better not to play your conference championship. Hence why I asked the same question. Who's better off just watching their conference championship be played out by 2 other teams to ensure a spot in the college football playoff? It's not logical, but it's just the way that the committee has given us information. I divorced my whole logic from this conversation. I just don't think it's that cut and dry. And the committee is going to say to you who is going to do, good win, bad win, win you lose, winning streak, how you playing, how many tickets can you sell?
All right.
We all know those are all the factors.
So back to James Franklin real quick.
Correct.
So James Franklin, I like this hire a lot for Virginia Tech. James Franklin was the coach that showed, regardless of what's happening today, he was the coach that showed that you could win at Vanderbilt. He was taking Vanderbilt to bowl games, won 9 games there 1 year. Then, went to Penn State, took over a fallen program, took them to the Rose Bowl within 3 years, won a Big Ten championship. And then we're judging him for losing to Ohio State and Michigan. Well, maybe not so much Michigan, but everybody loses to Ohio State. Correct. That's just the way that, except for Florida State, 3-0 all time. But just saying. But with that being said, Virginia Tech, right? So I got 2 questions here. Penn State, who do you think you are? You haven't won the national title since 1987. You had your undefeated season in 1994, but Nebraska got the title. Who do you think you are? You're not Ohio State. You know what I mean? Virginia Tech, who do you think you are? There's been a lot of fans out here talking about, James Franklin can't beat top 10 teams, XYZ, so on and so forth. Frank Beamer has 32% of Virginia Tech's all-time wins. Who do you think you are? Right, and that's what he was saying, Rez. That's what he was saying. Like, It's about the ticket sales. Who's going to fill up these NFL stadiums?
Yeah.
That's been his argument for the last couple of years.
Yeah, and like I said, I understand that it's like styles makes fights. In college football playoff, getting down to 12 teams, it's about who can sell out Jerry World.
I mean, I'm down with that.
I rather the first 4 weeks, no rankings. Through September, first Saturday in October, that Friday night, you release the rankings. Or maybe Tuesday. The Tuesday before the first Saturday in October, after all the end of the month, the last games in September are played. Most teams probably play 4 or 5 games at that point, depending on how many Saturdays they have in that month. Then you put out your rankings based off of what you currently see. It'll probably look a lot like the preseason rankings for the most part, where you won't have a surprise team like Vandy starting out at 24, going up to 1 after a month. But if there's no ranking, then now you have to blind rank them from 1 through 25 or 1 to however far down they go. Now you have that information. So now that Miami Notre Dame 10-2 conversation we're having right now is different when the first ranking comes out, because it's like they've only played 4 games and one of those losses was to Miami and they're both 3-1 at that point. You would have to give the edge to whoever won that game. But because the rankings come out the way they do, Miami had their losses when they did. Notre Dame is notoriously going to climb the ranking charts no matter what, no matter who they play. So that's the difference. Virginia Tech, go back to James Franklin. If he can get top tier recruits, because Virginia Tech's a good football program. They have been for years, dating back to the years of Vic. You had Tyrod Taylor, Marcus Vick, Brian Randall. I mean, you had a lot of just top tier quarterbacks. Logan Thomas went on to play a lot of years, a tight end in the NFL. The DB brothers went there. It was a lot of legacy that from, at least from Virginia Tech was winning the Virginia high school talent recruiting battle a lot of years over UVA.
Right.
If he can get back to that, because I know a lot of Virginia talent leaves the state. They leave the state, but if he can start still funneling that talent to Blacksburg and getting that Old Dominion kind of pride back, I think he's doing pretty well. And like I said, 8-4, 9-3 there is probably equivalent to 11-1, 12-0 at schools like Ole Miss and LSU.
Well, and then speaking of that talent that you're talking about, Chop Robinson, Tyler Warren, Abdul Carter, Jahan Dotson, Parker Washington, Joey Porter Jr., Micah Parsons, Freiermuth, Will Freeze, Miles Sanders, Saquon, Allen Robinson. Those are all dudes that James Franklin put in the NFL, while he was at Penn State. You know what I mean? So
a couple of those guys, Tyler Warren's from Virginia.
So
he's from around Blacksburg, yeah.
So now you're trying to tell me that he's going to go to Virginia Tech while telling me that the ACC is terrible. So theoretically, in most years, right, you got what? Clemson, Miami gets the talent, maybe not always the results, but they get the talent. If Florida State gets a good coach in there, you figure they'll recruit right and be in the way. But at worst, you're starting out as the fourth best program in the conference, maybe.
If you're Virginia Tech with James Franklin, you look at Clemson. We don't know how the Dabo Sweeney Clemson buyout, Boosters relationship is going to pan out. Having 6, 7, 8 losses and a lot of arguments at the podium might not bode well for him come the offseason. Or maybe they look around and say, you know what, you can win this conference again next year, get back on track. We'll funnel you another 30 or 40 million for NIL money, whatever it is you need. Similar to Luke Fickell up in Wisconsin. So if you're James Franklin, you're looking at it, okay, what you have in the ACC is just, you have really, really good colleges, really, really, really good education programs. Like UVA, it's a tough school to get in academically. Virginia Tech, academic school. North Carolina, Duke, very tough academic school. So you have a good, like the school environment, the ADs, the chancellors, the deans, is a quality college environment. If you can bring football talent to that environment, I think the decision making will be based off from an educational standpoint. It won't be football first, student or student performance second. So if he can get good students in there who also play good football, that's the difference. Like we talked about, some of these other programs where it's just about winning football games,
right,
and getting players in there just to win football games. Virginia Tech, UVA, Georgia Tech, a lot of these schools. When I didn't realize until when I was in high school, like how difficult, because I just saw all these teams on TV playing football. I didn't realize the SAT standards. I didn't know what that tech meant. Like that's a very highly technical school. Like a lot of people go there for engineering and a lot of these really highly technical.
Yeah, I was still trying to figure out what the hell an Aggie was.
Yeah, so it's just like, so it just when you see if he can get good quality student athletes in there that can also win football games, I think he can build. Like, no one's gonna compare him to Frank Beamer because it wasn't like Beamer was out there like Bear Bryant. He had a good
he didn't
program
win titles.
He had a good program every single year, and you're producing good talent that went to the NFL because Virginia high school football is an upper echelon football program as well. It's probably like top 12, 15 in the country. It's just that we only hear about the top 5. But Virginia football is very good football. So long as if you can keep those guys in house, you can build a really, really good program at Virginia Tech.
And don't forget, like I said at the start of this conversation, James Franklin was over in Vanderbilt. So, he's got that Carolina, Tennessee area as well.
He knows that. He knows that region. He knows
he
how to get them.
Maryland.
He knows where to go to get players. Like I said, you see him on the sideline at Jersey high school games every once in a while as well.
Hey, all I'm gonna say is, rise up, Tidewater, and and then of course, real quick, Lane Kiffin apparently has gotten an ultimatum from Ole Miss, like, hey, before we play this Egg Bowl, we want to know who you coaching next year. So allegedly, he visited Florida on Sunday, visited LSU yesterday. So real quick, we ain't got to get into a deep conversation, but we had this conversation a few weeks ago. So you still feel the same? Stay at Ole Miss?
I mean, I'd stay at Ole Miss because at a minimum, 3 or 4 SEC programs are going to be rebuilding. Auburn, LSU, Florida, off the bat are rebuilding. If Alabama doesn't win it all, that's going to be friction. That's going to be tension there. Texas A&M, you're going to have to be like, all right, prove it you could do it 2 years in a row. Texas, is Arch going to stay? Is he going to go?
You can do it once.
Prove it you could, like, same thing. So it's like, I think of the top 5 or 6 programs in the SEC, his is ready to plug and play for 2026. Whereas I think every other program is entering 2026 with a lot of questions.
You don't think the portal changes some of that?
Well, yeah, but you have to he's already at 300 meters in a 400-meter race. So even with the portal, he could just retool. A lot of these guys are they're rebuilding. Auburn, Florida's probably going to lose a handful of their players. Auburn's the same. LSU, we know the talent that was probably already committed there that's probably decommitted. So if you're willing to play in Louisiana, he might be able to, poach some of these recruits that were going to LSU anyway. That could have been part of the meeting, figuring out who was coming in. And now he's like, now I know these guys were coming in. I'm going to see if I can get him to come to Ole Miss. Because like I said, he's at a head start of all the programs. I think Ole Miss this year, they're like I said, they're in cruise control until the college football playoffs. You make a couple of you win, maybe you win 1 or 2 games, at least one. You make a good showing. Now that guy who was ready to go to LSU, he's taking that Lane Kiffin phone call. He's riding in the Bentley. He's at the Giant game talking to Jackson Dart or whatever it is you need to get these guys to come down to Ole Miss.
Speaking of which, shout out to my guy Cam Scatterboo scrapping on Monday Night Raw last night.
You need to be rehabbing
with his foot in the boot. But anyway, I think that's enough football for one day. Let's take it over to the association. Mr. Logical, the NBA season is in full swing right now. There's a whole lot of players missing in action. But I tell you what, OKC, I got on here and said that the Denver Nuggets were going to win the title this year.
Yeah.
OKC took that personal, man.
They, much like my my Ole Miss argument, is like they're ready to plug and play. Like they took their roster from 2024-25. They hung out all summer. They went on some vacations. Somebody probably got married. The team probably went to that. They probably went to some christenings, some bat mitzvahs, or whatever it is they were doing. A lot of team bonding stuff, and they roll right into 25-26. Ready to do the same thing. They have the team that's built. Their superstar handles the ball. They have 3-and-D guys. They have defensive guys. They have rebounders. Hardenstein had a game last week. He had like 30 points, 15 rebounds, or something crazy like that. So if you're going to get that kind of production out of your team, and they're young, that's the key. Like, they are a very young basketball team. They're a young basketball team that seems to be constructed organizationally from top to bottom, from the GM to the equipment manager. They all seem to be in lockstep. And I'm going to venture to say you're Denver winning a championship. If everyone's healthy, doesn't seem likely.
Well, who else is a young team? The Detroit Pistons, who are now winners of 11 in a row. Are the Pistons for real sitting up here only one game behind OKC?
I mean, it would be dope. It would be, because you and I think we're like the advocates for the small market. I personally, like, you feel like the small market gets like zero publicity, and I feel like, listen, we got the internet. I could watch a game on my phone right now.
Give them publicity. The people that are on TV all day getting millions of viewers don't talk about it. The
conversation needs to be: are we headed for Pistons, Cavs, NBA Finals, and a Thunder Nuggets NBA Finals? You get that conversation going.
Or conference finals,
conference finals. Yeah, excuse me. So then you get that conversation going, and then you people start throwing in Rockets, Lakers. Now we're having a nice conversation to go. I think the Knicks are turning it around, or I think the Hawks are maybe a move away, and then you start kind of like bridging this gap to this conversation. Because right now the conversation is kind of bland because people are looking like Detroit, OKC is good. They won a championship last year. It's not a lot of excitement. I think it would be dope for two young teams, young stars. So I saw an article the other day. Cade Cunningham's getting his signature shoe. It's coming out 26, 27. You need that. The Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson 1980s basketball era taught us that the players, the markets, the showcasing of talent is how you grow your brand. You keep sending all these guys to China to get around. Like, you can't keep sending James Harden, Steph Curry, and all these old guys to China. You got to send some of these young guys too, because Steph is a few years. He's got to wrap it up. A little long in the tooth. LeBron long in the tooth. Luka, not an American guy, but he's still doing his thing. Austin Reeves, like, you got to start highlighting these guys, and I think starting with Detroit, OKC, can that be the final? Instead of being, and then the pundits don't get on TV and say, nobody wants to see Detroit play OKC. It doesn't matter what you want. It is a fucking 20-team tournament. So whoever the last two standing are, that's what you're gonna get.
Yeah, shout out to the 1-13 Indiana Pacers. As I look around the league, LeBron James, the one and only, is practicing again. The Lakers sitting up here at 10-4. So with a guy like LeBron, since he's so ball dominant, and we talk about him and Luka at times kind of being the same guy.
Correct.
How much do you think his return could set the Lakers back from the hot start that they've had?
I won't be optimistic.
Don't be optimistic. Tell the truth.
Well, my truth is also optimistic. I think LeBron is probably thinking, all right, I can get to any spot I want and get points when I need to. So I'll let Luka and Austin do their thing. And then when it's for me to do my thing, I'll exert 6 to 8 seconds worth of energy, get to my spot, get a layup, maybe get 5, get 2 free throws. But I don't have to dribble the ball the whole time. So now he can put a little bit more effort into defense and really just kind of taper his energy off and just be prepared, get back in the flow of the game. I don't think he's going to come back in. He's a smart basketball player. He sees what works. I know, it slipped. Pause. So he sees what works on the court. And he instinctively will know, like, I'm messing this up if he comes back and the efficiency numbers are different, or Austin's not getting the same kind of shots he was getting, or Luka's not getting the same kind of space he was getting before. LeBron will recognize that. And on top of that, like I said, he can get to his spot anytime he wants. If he could do that using less energy, I'm pretty sure he'll welcome that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
I go to the bench and yeah.
Well, I think at the end of the day, of course, the problem is going to be Austin Reeves, because, he's been on one. Like, Austin Reeves is looking like, hey, we could send him to a team and they're going to give us good stuff. Because we've been talking about the Lakers the last couple of years. Everybody has all these mock trades, but what do they have to give up? You know what I mean? They got Austin Reeves. I don't think they'll give up Austin Reeves, but I'm saying I don't think they will. But yeah. So how about the Toronto Raptors, winners of 4 in a row, sitting here at 9-5, and I was one of their biggest critics coming into this season because I was looking at it from the standpoint of you got R.J. Barrett, Brandon Ingram. That just sounds like oil and water. That's Luka and LeBron, but the reverse way. Because Luka and LeBron at least get the others involved. They just got to have the ball all the time. Whereas Barrett and Ingram are the black holes. But somehow, somehow it works. You know what I mean? And, shout out to the Raptors for starting off the season, the way that they have. Paul George is back. That don't really mean nothing. But, hey, Tyrese Maxey...
strangest superstar. He's had the strangest superstar career. He's had like a NBA Kirk Cousins kind of career where it's like he's getting all this money. The criticism is just as loud, but yet he keeps getting this money. He keeps getting these deals. He has these fans, and it's like, they don't do anything.
Yeah.
It's just very strange, like how his career has played out. Like, I don't think people even I haven't seen one like Paul George jersey. You haven't heard a single person talk about Paul George. It's weird.
I think he got podcast t-shirts now.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna front. I don't even know what number he wears. Does he wear 13?
I don't even remember. He hasn't even.
For real, I'm not even joking. I'm like,
he would have to, right?
Yeah. Or is it 3? Is it 13?
I would think. Let's see. Yeah, it's 13.
Okay, that's.
Oh no, actually, no, it's number 8. Actually,
That's like how limited he has been in this basketball space.
Yeah, but Tyrese Maxey has grabbed this team and said it's mine. VJ Edgecombe started the season on a heater. He's been kind of coming back to earth just a little bit, but still playing well. This rookie class is delivering so far. I know everybody came into the season talking about Cooper Flagg, and Cooper Flagg has not disappointed by any means. But, Con Knipple down in Charlotte, even though the record won't show it, has probably been playing the best of any rookie. And, I hate to say that.
The record will never show. They never show in Charlotte. Yeah, no matter how well individual play, Charlotte just seems to be a place where wins just don't vacation.
But what the craziest part about the whole thing is, so Con Knipple's playing well, Cooper Flagg's playing well. And then the third rookie that has been standing out is the dude that was supposed to play for Duke this year, Cedric Coward, down in Memphis. And now that Ja Morant's out with this hamstring, I think he's really going to come into his own. And by the end of the season, it's going to be his team going forward. But just because I brought up Ja Morant, I'm gonna run down my list real quick that I talked to you about earlier, because we got injury after injury after injury. And, so you got Trae Young out, Giannis out, Wemby out, Ja out, Cam Thomas, AD, Christian Brown, Tari Eason, Bradley Beal's out for the season. We talked about LeBron. He hasn't played yet this season. OG Anunoby's out. Jalen Brunson's got an ankle, and Walker Kessler's out for the season. That is a lot going on for so early in the season. And, OKC,
we're not even in December yet.
Yeah, and OKC's been doing this damage without J-Dub. You know what I mean? So, and don't forget, like, they had a game last week or a stretch last week where they beat the Warriors by 24 and then beat the Lakers by 29 the next night.
That's going to be a situation where he's going to be ready to come back, let's say, December 15th. And they're going to be like, you know what? Hold off until Christmas. Like, they're going to have, like, just, like, luxury players in OKC. It's like 14-1. We'll wait till we get to like around Christmas, see what their record is before we start talking about records and stuff like that. Yeah, I like what the NBA has to offer. I do like it when the Lakers are good. It is fun because when the Lakers are bad, it dominates the airways with this conversation. What does the Lakers need to win a championship? It's like they're bad. Like, stop talking about teams that are bad and what they need to win a championship. Like, it's just a weird conversation. It's like that doesn't make any logical sense. But when they're good, at least the conversation is like, okay, how do they stack up with the West when they're actually in the like? It was so many times in the last 4 or 5 years where they're like 6 or 7, and the question was like, who do you fear more in the playoffs, Denver or the Lakers? Like, are you kidding me? Denver's a 1 or 2 seed. Like, that's a silly fucking question, but it dominated the airways and it was so frustrating. But like, when they're good, fine. Have the conversation. Talk about how many points Luka's scoring per game. Talk about what's actually going on. Not, you know what? There's a lot of unhappy bigs on the East. I'm pretty sure they will like it in LA. You think the Lakers have enough to make a move? That's what we've been hearing for so many years. And it's like, I'm sick of hearing this. So now they're good. That helps.
Well, speaking of Denver, it's kind of funny.
Well,
speaking of Denver, it's kind of funny because one of my jokes in the offseason was they traded Michael Porter for Michael Porter. And, but what I didn't factor in is that they traded Michael Porter for playoff Michael Porter. Like Cam Johnson came over. I thought he was going to be, and it's still early, but I thought he was going to have this impact on the team. He's hit 13 threes this season, and 5 of them were last night. That's where we are.
He's a good defender.
He is.
He's a hustle guy. He's a good locker room guy. Like he's gonna keep you in games because I think he's like 6'8", 6'9". He probably can switch on to multiple players between your guard and your power forward. So that's what he gives you over Michael Porter Jr. Michael Porter Jr. went to Brooklyn. We talked about it all summer. He went on every podcast and was saying all kinds of random stuff that no one wanted to hear.
Yeah.
He just seems like a bit of an obnoxious guy, whereas Cam Johnson seems like a real like we saw. Remember, what's the boy name that played Kobe White? His reaction to when he got drafted, like how much he was like excited for him. That shows you how good of a person he is for his friend in his own interview about him being drafted, being that excited about him being drafted. So I imagine that he's probably just great in the locker room. He's probably just happy to be out of Brooklyn.
Yeah,
And
probably.
that pain that he's dealing with there.
Yeah, and of course, my Wizards, down here at 1-12, but the Jazz, saying, I mean, they're only 5-8, but I mean, that's a hell of a step up so far in the season. But hey, how about Jaylen Brown? 27 points per game. It's still early in the season. They've only played 15 games, but they're 8-7. They're a game and a half out of the 3 seed. A little early for seed talk, but just making a point because I say 8-7. People are going to say mid, awful, all that stuff. Yeah. But we're still early in the season.
3 through 11.
Right.
Yeah, it's so 3 seed is 3.5 games back of the Pistons for first place. And the 11 seed is 5 games back of Pistons.
Right.
So 3 through 11 is pretty tight out east.
Yeah. So the Hawks, no Trae Young. You know what that means? You would say they probably aren't scoring a lot. I would say they're actually playing defense. And and to the people, they know who they are that I've had these conversations with. There's 2 sides of the ball. So, like, that's cool that you can get me 27 points on
so small
38% shooting. And cool, you got me 9 assists.
Defense is effort and strength. He's small. He's smaller than Kyrie. I think he probably is like Bryce Young size, the NFL quarter. Like Bryce, maybe. Like he's like they probably have him listed as 6'1". He's probably closer to 5'11". Mm-hmm. It's just only especially when you're an offensive ball handler, scorer, the effort on the defensive end, it's probably not going to match up. Just because you're like, listen, I'm not dealing with these big ass guards. I'll get in the pass lane, try to get some steals, and I'll be here and I'll be here to contest. But he's definitely not getting he's not going to get any help off the blind side and get a block. He probably has 5 blocks in his career. But yeah, that's going to make him expendable. But he's been on a trading block for years, though. So I imagine that somebody will make a move.
And then, of course, in sad news, we've already had our first head coach get fired. Willie Green down in New Orleans, who he is a victim of he's not the GM. Because, I look at it because if most people were the GM or I should say the owner, I think Willie Green would still be there and the GM would be out. Because when you look at so there's a couple of ways to measure a coach.
Didn't they give away their whole trading? All their picks to get Derek Queen, and he's barely played?
Well, no, he's been playing well. But he basically so what happened was they had Milwaukee's pick. And I'm sorry, yeah. Was it Milwaukee? They had Milwaukee's pick. And people thought that Milwaukee was going to come off of Giannis. So that pick was going to be very valuable. They traded it to the Atlanta Hawks to draft Derek Queen. And you know what I mean? He's been playing well. Like, he looks like a future all-star. They drafted Jeremiah Fears a little earlier, and he looks good. And that's why I was going to say you can measure a coach in a couple of different ways. Obviously, wins and losses are the main factor. But I want to see what you turn these players into. And Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen started off well. They have that center VC that I think that's how you say it, but he's been playing well. You see what Dyson Daniels is doing over in Atlanta right now. So Willie Green was developing players. The problem is that Brandon Ingram and Zion were never around. And, you know, and
Correct.
I mean, Zion's hurt right now. You know what I mean? So like Willie Green ended up being fired because the GM couldn't set up the team. I mean, they brought in Jordan Poole.
Yeah. Hopefully he has a nice little contract and he can, you know, keep getting these checks or whatever his buyout is. Because I look at it like this. If you're willing to fire your coach less than 15 games into the season, then that means that person was already on like a ridiculous hot seat to where you needed a complete overhaul of how you've been playing for the past couple of years on this guy. And if you don't think you made enough moves with players for him to take the same crop of guys and then win more games, then just let him go in the offseason. It's like, if you're willing to let me go less than a quarter way through the season, then that means I was already on a short leash and I needed to be 12-2, you know, at this point. Or like, did I need to be 9-5? Like, you know, if I needed like that kind of, if I had those kind of margins, and you had those kind of expectations of me, like, okay, if this guy isn't this many wins in the first 15 games, then we're gonna get rid of him. Then get rid of me in the offseason.
Yeah, they're 2-12.
Install everything you get that person needs, and then start fresh instead of trying to start fresh now. 10 games into the season or 15 games into the season, and you're already 10 games below 500.
Yeah, they're 2-12. They've lost 3 games by 30 points. You know what I mean? They lost their first 6 games. They got 3 other double-digit losses. So their point differential so far this season, -128. You know, since I understand
basketball game.
So I understand, you know, like feeling like, hey, we're not winning. This is year 3 or 4. It might even be year 5, but he has made the playoffs, you know what I mean, in his tenure. So I think that you just give him better pieces when you look at the teams that he made the playoffs with, especially considering the fact that Zion has been out so much, you know. But back to the Trae Young thing real quick. I forgot to mention this in my note here, but since last season, they're 59-76 with him, 26-18 without him. So, you know, the Spurs got off to this hot start. Now Wemby's out. So come on back on down to earth, guys. You know, and we'll see how well they do, because Luke Cornett has been playing well, but obviously, 1, he's not Wemby.
Not Wemby.
2, he doesn't play anything like Wemby. So you're not even getting that. Like we always talk about, hey, if you got Lamar Jackson, have that backup that can do some of the things that he does.
Yeah,
like
you be somewhat mobile. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't even have that going for you. So, you know, it's been a pretty good NBA season so far. The Rockets are actually scoring points now. You know, they're 9-3, sitting up there, you know, behind the Nuggets for the 2 seed. You know, the Warriors, Draymond Green's been calling everybody out. I saw he got into it with a fan who called him Angel Reese the other day. That dude looked like he was like 6'10" too. I don't even know. He was taller than Draymond. But, you know, but yeah, the Warriors, look, Kuminga's out for a couple of games. Just fold it up. The Warriors aren't doing anything this year besides Steph occasionally being entertaining.
Yeah, they're too old. They just got old. They rely on old. And I don't know, like, I've been seeing these reports. I haven't really. Steph Curry got a $780 million shoe deal with Nike.
Yeah, he left Under Armour.
He also apparently left Apple because he's doing his Google commercials talking about it's good to make changes. So Aisha better watch out.
Uh-oh.
Motherfucker just moving 34-9-3 tonight. They still lost by 8 to Orlando.
Go Magic. You know what I mean? But yeah, you know, I'm watching Duke and Kansas right now, you know, 67-61, or actually Kansas just hit a 3, it looks like. So 67-64 with about 4:55 left. But we will be back on Friday. And you know what that means? Picks, and
Some
Mo
Mo
Picks. Yes, sir. You know what I'm saying? He is the one and only world-renowned, world-famous, cool, calm, and collected. Born in Texas, raised in Virginia, representing everything New Jerusalem, even the cheesesteaks. He is Mr. Logical.
top tier sandwiches. We have top tier sandwiches here.
Don't bring feelings to a fact fight. And then, of course, down here in the Alamo, getting ready for Anthony Joshua and Jake Paul, apparently, because I'm going left so much that you thought I was southpaw. I'm your unorthodox statistician, 2-5. We are Sports Reports as ordered. Like, review, subscribe, share, rate, do all the free things, do all the good things. Liquid death in hand, and come back and see us on Friday. We are everywhere you get your podcasts. Do the things. We love you. Out. As soon as I hit my button, that was the wrong key there. There we go.
It's about to go down.